So a couple years ago, I got this cute little sketchbook. See, it's actually about the same size as that newer Paul Rubens one I got. So this is the Paul Rubens one. This is a reflection sketchbook. It is not 100% cotton, but it was just like the perfect little watercolored travel sketchbook. And I always really like the size, and it's got like the nice, you know, band closure and the little pocket in the back. And I'm just a fan of this one, but for a long time, I hadn't used actual watercolor in here. I had used watercolor pencil. So when I had wetted in here, I just thought that it looked a little funny because I was using watercolor pencil and not watercolors. And so I didn't really pick up on the fact that something was wrong with it. And if you look at it, I mean, the colors are dull and it just kind of like, it actually, watercolor pencil usually looks better than this, and it just kind of looks weird. So then I actually pulled out some watercolors. I pulled out that little set that I had made of the artist Loft ones, okay? And when you look at it, you can see, I mean, it looks streaky and weird, and like everything when I started painting it on there just sunk right in with like in 2 seconds. And it kind of almost looks like I painted on here with like Crayola markers or something. It's really strange. And I started to think about it, and I was like, oh my gosh, maybe this has bad sizing. Maybe that's what's wrong with it. Because I didn't really realize that was a thing that could happen until I was watching some other video the other day. And then I was like, oh, and I had bought this from Jerry's Artorama, and I actually went on their website and read the reviews on this. And most of them were great, but then there were a couple people who complained about the exact same thing, and the response from Jerry's was that it sounded like they had a defective notebook. And I was like, oh, that's probably what happened. I probably bought a defective one that maybe had been stored incorrectly, and so the sizing went bad. So I even tested it on this page, and you can see it again, super streaky and weird. So I was doing a little bit of research to see if there, what on earth do you do with a watercolor notebook that has bad sizing? And another YouTuber I had watched, actually put the Daniel Smith Watercolor Ground on the pages, and that fixed it. So I decided, okay, I'm gonna try this. So we're gonna see. I'm just gonna try it on a couple pages first, and if it doesn't work, then I haven't really wasted anything. I've also just always been curious about this stuff and kind of wanted to try it, so this will be kind of an opportunity to do both things. So here we go. Okay, so this is interesting. The kind of texture that this leaves on here, I'm not sure what I'm going to think of that later. So this is kind of a fun experiment. It definitely has a different feeling than I expected. So I'm gonna go wash out my brush because I have a feeling I'm gonna regret it if I don't. Kind of got everywhere. So that was not expected. We'll see. This might just turn into like a little pen sketch notebook. I don't know. So if you look at this, you can see that the texture is quite rough. So I was looking at, the instructions on the container, and they do say that you can dilute it up to with 10% water. So I'm going to do the next 2 pages with the watercolor ground just a little bit diluted, to see if that kind of smooths it out a little bit. I'm taking off some little extra edges here that are kind of hanging off. Now it does say I can't use this for 48 hours, so we'll have to wait and see how this really affected things. But I kind of feel like it's really dry here in Arizona. I could probably do it sooner than that, but I'll follow directions. So here we go. I'm going to do this with a more diluted layer for the next 2 pages. It's been 48 hours, and so I have these 2 pages that have the rougher version of the watercolor ground on them, and then I have several pages where I diluted it. So I'm going to try and draw from some flower stock photos on some of these and just see what happens and what it looks like and if it behaves better, and you know, this is also just a good chance for me to see what this watercolor ground is like. So. Okay, so that sketch was a little painful. The amount of grit on here, and it really, it really soaks in the pen ink. So if you look, if you could see over here, I actually, like, my pen kind of dried out my pen a little bit. But also it's cool if you want to create like a lot of texture. I mean, that is kind of a neat texture, right? So, okay, now I'm going to work on the watercolor part of it. We'll see what happens here. This is so bad. Okay, first of all, I can't decide if this thing actually dried up my pen or if this pen was just already kind of dried up. I don't know. So the interesting thing about this is you can tell exactly where the edges of that watercolor ground are, which is kind of interesting. It does give kind of a cool, like, grunge effect. Like, it was not at all what I was going for, but it's kind of interesting. Yeah, I mean, it was pretty strange. I don't know. I'm hoping the pages where I had like a much lighter layer will make more sense, but maybe it's just not gonna work. The interesting thing was that it took a really long time for everything to dry. I'm assuming because of all the watercolor ground, and, you know, kept it all from soaking in. So it made it much easier for me to kind of like keep blending colors together. But you notice also that everything dried like way lighter where the watercolor ground was. So also, this is Micron pen. This is an alcohol-based ink. It shouldn't really have been able to lift it like the way it did, but it kind of lifted it a lot. So I don't know. Yeah. Okay, now I'm gonna try, once this dries a little bit, I'm gonna try a different picture on one of the other pages with a much thinner layer. And we'll see if maybe that turns out better. Okay, I'm gonna try a different one. So these pages, I diluted it quite a bit. So, and I think I got better coverage. So we'll see how this turns out. Okay, so I wasn't intending to make some like epic painting here. I really just wanted to see what this could do. And as you can see, this one is a far, far, far better result. Like painting on this paper was downright pleasant. I actually kind of forgot all about the experiment, was just painting it and having fun. And it all seemed to be doing basically what I expected it to do. It's not, you know, the world's most amazing paper. It's not 100% cotton or anything, but it definitely is behaving far more the way I expected it to behave in the very first place. So I'll kind of zoom in on this so you can see the difference between these two pictures. So, I mean, really, that looks pretty good. Especially considering the fact that I am using like very cheap watercolors. These are the Michaels Artist Loft ones. I mean, they're not anything special at all, but it worked pretty well. And I was able, you saw that I was able to do tons of layers and everything else, and everything just kind of behaved basically the way I would expect if the paper had been sized correctly in the first place. So let's flip back to that other one now. So yeah, definitely dilute the watercolor ground. Unless you want like a really weird grunge look. So yeah, that was fun. So I think I did this on a few pages afterward, and I might, you know, go through and finish up the sketchbook that way. I mean, obviously, like, I wouldn't put myself in this position in the first place, you know, if I had a choice. But at least this will make this like usable, so that's cool. And it definitely makes me want to explore the watercolor ground more, although I think I'd have to experiment a lot before I put it on any surface to kind of see what the thickness should be and how that's going to work out.